Welcome to Timeless Memories. I'm Sarah. This channel is a special place where we honor remarkable lives that continue to be remembered with love and admiration. Here, we reflect on unforgettable figures from film, music, television, and culture, celebrating their journey, their impact, and the legacy they left behind. Every tribute we share keeps their memory alive and forever meaningful. Mary Beth Hurt, the American actress admired for her quiet intensity and emotional precision, has passed away at the age of 79 at an assisted living facility in Jersey City, New Jersey, following a battle with Alzheimer's disease. She leaves behind a career defined less by spectacle and more by subtle, deeply felt performances that often lingered long after the credits rolled. She is especially remembered for her role in Interiors, where she starred alongside Diane Keaton in one of Woody Allen's most restrained and critically noted early dramas. Her performance reflected a controlled emotional depth that became a hallmark of her work. Over the years, she continued to deliver memorable roles in films such as The World According to Garp, The Age of Innocence, and 6 Degrees of Separation, each time bringing a grounded humanity to complex characters. Rather than relying on theatrical intensity, Hurt built her reputation on restraint, sensitivity, and emotional honesty. Her acting style often communicated more in silence than in dialogue, giving her characters a lived-in realism. She is remembered today as a performer who trusted understatement, leaving behind a legacy that continues to influence actors who value truth over performance and nuance over excess in American cinema. Ernie DJ Lord Sayer was a respected DJ, radio personality, and producer who passed away at 52, leaving a strong mark on hip-hop culture and broadcasting. Known for his distinctive voice and sharp ear for talent, he helped introduce several underground artists who later rose to major prominence, shaping the sound of an era. His work extended beyond radio into music production, where he supported established and emerging performers in studio and live environments. He also contributed voice work to video game projects, showing a wide creative range beyond music. Throughout his career, he was recognized for his passion, consistency, and dedication to uplifting new talent within the industry. Many peers viewed him as a connector, someone who could bridge the gap between raw, emerging voices and mainstream recognition. His influence was felt not only through the artists he supported, but also through the culture he helped strengthen over time. His passing represents the loss of a creative force whose work quietly shaped modern hip-hop, yet his legacy continues through the music and voices he helped bring forward. Edith Ava Eger was born on September 29, 1927, in Košice, a city whose borders shifted between Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and later Slovakia. She grew up in a Hungarian-speaking Jewish family that valued education, discipline, and the arts. From an early age, she showed remarkable talent in movement and performance, training in ballet and gymnastics, and eventually earning a place on the Hungarian Olympic gymnastics team before her life was shattered by World War II. In 1944, after the Nazi occupation of Hungary, she and her family were forced into a ghetto and then deported to Auschwitz. During the selection process, she was separated from her parents, who were later killed. Along with her sister Magda, she survived the horrors of multiple concentration camps, including Mauthausen, enduring starvation, forced labor, and a death march to Gunskirchen. In the final days of the war, she was liberated by American soldiers while gravely ill. After the war, she briefly returned home and discovered the extent of her losses, including her fiancé and much of her family. She later married fellow survivor Bela Eger and emigrated to the United States in 1949. There, she rebuilt her life, studied psychology, and became a respected clinical psychologist specializing in trauma and PTSD, earning her PhD in Texas and teaching at institutions such as the University of Southern California. Her books, including The Choice and The Gift, shared her journey of survival and healing, offering insight into resilience and emotional recovery. She passed away on April 27, 2026, at the age of 98, leaving behind a legacy of strength, forgiveness, and the belief that healing is always possible. News has been shared that Dolores Keane passed away peacefully at her home in Ireland at the age of 72, marking the end of a remarkable chapter in Irish music. As one of the defining founding voices of Dadann, she played a key role in shaping the modern sound of Irish folk, breathing life into traditional songs such as The Rambling Irishman, with an emotional depth that set her apart. Her voice was often described as rich, haunting, and deeply expressive, carrying the weight of Irish storytelling across generations and borders. Beyond her work with the band, she shared the stage with respected artists including John Prine and Emmylou Harris, earning admiration from musicians across genres. What made her stand out was not only technical skill, but the way she turned every performance into a lived story. Her legacy remains deeply woven into Irish musical heritage, continuing to influence singers and listeners who find comfort, identity, and history in her timeless recordings. She is remembered as a defining voice of traditional Irish culture. London sits under a pale, unmoving sky, the kind of grey that flattens time rather than marks it. In a quiet room in St. John's Wood, a piano rests by a window, its surface worn, its keys softened by decades of use. A small lamp casts a gentle circle of light over it. It is not a studio built for spectacle, just a domestic space where music arrives without announcement. Paul McCartney sometimes sits here alone, no audience, no rehearsal schedule pressing in, just the slow unfolding of memory through sound. At 83, the idea of him feels layered, the young man sprinting across stages with Höfner violin bass, the songwriter who helped reshape modern music, and the older figure now listening more than performing. His fingers still find familiar shapes on the keys, though the pace has changed. Between phrases he often pauses, hands resting lightly on the ivory, as if the silence itself is part of the composition. In those pauses, time feels unusually visible, not dramatic, not tragic, just present. The room holds a kind of quiet that absorbs decades, where every note seems to echo backward into history. Liverpool roots and the first absence of silence. Long before fame, before stages and global recognition, there was Liverpool, dense, working class, and full of sound that had nothing to do with music industry ambition. In that environment grew Paul McCartney, shaped by ordinary rhythms, school, family dinners, radios playing American rock and roll drifting through British airwaves. His father, Jim, had once played in a jazz band, and music entered the household as something natural rather than exceptional. But the emotional center of the home was his mother, Mary, a nurse whose presence defined stability more than words ever could. When she died of cancer in 1956, the structure of that home shifted irreversibly. Paul was only 14. The house remained physically unchanged, chairs, kitchen sounds, routines, but its emotional gravity was altered. Grief did not arrive as expression, but as suspension, a state where ordinary life continued but felt detached. Later reflections suggest that this absence became foundational, not in a romantic sense, but as an internal reference point that would quietly surface in his music for decades. A church fate and the meeting that redirected everything. By the time adolescence settled in, music had become both refuge and language for Paul McCartney. Guitars replaced earlier instruments, and practice filled hours that might otherwise have been uncertain or restless. In 1957, at a church fete in Woolton, he met John Lennon. Lennon's presence was immediate, sharp humor, guarded confidence, a personality already leaning toward performance even outside formal stages. When Paul was invited to play for Lennon's group, the Quarrymen, he did so without ceremony. What mattered was not context but capability. He could play, and more importantly, he understood what he was playing. That moment of recognition was subtle but decisive. Lennon did not immediately respond with enthusiasm. Instead, he observed. What he saw was not just technical skill but parity, someone who could challenge rather than simply follow. The decision to bring Paul into the group did not feel historic at the time, it felt practical, yet in retrospect, it marked the convergence of two creative forces that would define an era of popular music. The Quarrymen, George Harrison, and the formation of a language. After that initial meeting, the group that would eventually become the Beatles still existed in an unstable form known as the Quarrymen. Early rehearsals were informal, often chaotic, shaped more by enthusiasm than discipline. Paul McCartney and John Lennon began developing a creative exchange that quickly turned competitive in the best sense. Each idea invited a stronger response. Song fragments, lyrical sketches, and guitar progressions were passed back and forth, like conversation rather than composition. The arrival of George Harrison added another dimension. Initially considered too young, his playing on a bus proved otherwise, precise, confident, and musically mature beyond his years. With his inclusion, the trio began to stabilize into something more defined. They were still performing in small venues, but the internal dynamic had changed. Music was no longer imitation alone, it was becoming authorship. In these early stages, there was no awareness of future global recognition, only the sense that something structurally different was beginning to form. Hamburg Nights and the hardening of a band. The early 1960s pulled the Beatles away from Liverpool and into Hamburg, where performance conditions were intense and unforgiving. Long sets stretched for hours, often late into the night, in clubs that demanded energy over refinement. For Paul McCartney, this period was less about fame and more about endurance. The repetition of performance built discipline. Mistakes became visible and unavoidable, forcing improvement in real time. John Lennon, George Harrison, and the rest of the group learned to synchronize not just musically but physically, responding to exhaustion as part of the craft. Hamburg functioned as a kind of unintentional training ground where style was stripped away and replaced with raw capability. By the time they returned to Britain, they were no longer inexperienced teenagers experimenting with sound. They had become a working unit, capable of sustaining long performances with consistency. The transformation was not announced, but it was visible in every aspect of their playing. Brian Epstein, George Martin, and the opening of a door recognition did not arrive gradually, but through a series of precise encounters. Brian Epstein, a record shop manager with a keen sense of presentation, discovered the Beatles at the Cavern Club. What he saw was not just musical potential, but cultural impact, waiting to be organized. His decision to manage them introduced structure where there had previously been improvisation. Suits replaced casual clothing, schedules replaced uncertainty. Soon after, producer George Martin entered the picture at EMI, recognizing immediately that the partnership between Paul McCartney and John Lennon was not typical songwriting collaboration, but a dynamic exchange of complementary instincts. Early recordings such as Love Me Do revealed something unusual, vocal blending that felt instinctively balanced. The industry did not yet fully understand what it was hearing, but momentum was building. Each decision, management, production, recording, added another layer of direction to a group that had previously moved without map or framework. Beatlemania and the pressure of visibility. By the time widespread attention arrived, the Beatles had already evolved beyond their original identity. What followed was not simply popularity, but saturation. Crowds gathered everywhere, often exceeding the ability of venues or security to contain them. For Paul McCartney, this period introduced a paradox: constant visibility paired with increasing personal distance. Songs were performed in environments where sound itself struggled to survive against audience reaction. John Lennon and the rest of the group experienced similar conditions, where performance became almost secondary to spectacle. Yet within this intensity, songwriting continued. The creative partnership between Lennon and McCartney did not pause under pressure, it accelerated. Ideas were generated in transit, backstage, and between obligations. Fame did not replace creativity, it compressed it into smaller and more urgent spaces. The world saw expansion, the individuals inside it experienced acceleration without pause. The American breakthrough and global acceleration. The appearance of The Ed Sullivan Show in 1964 marked a turning point where regional success became global recognition. For the Beatles, the United States represented scale previously unimaginable. The performance reached tens of millions of viewers, compressing geography into a single televised moment. Paul McCartney experienced the scale of reaction in real time, both on stage and through immediate cultural response afterward. John Lennon and the rest of the group were no longer simply musicians touring internationally, they had become a shared global reference point. What made this moment distinct was not just exposure, but simultaneity. Audiences across continents experiencing the same cultural shift at once. The effect was cumulative, not isolated. Each appearance reinforced the last, creating momentum that extended beyond music into identity, fashion, and generational language, songwriting, memory, and the weight of continuity. As years progressed, the work of Paul McCartney became increasingly reflective. Early compositions built on immediacy gradually gave way to more introspective writing. Songs such as Yesterday emerged from a place that felt almost accidental, arriving in dreamlike form before being fully understood. The partnership with John Lennon remained central, though each writer developed distinct emotional territories. Within the Beatles, creative direction expanded rather than narrowed, absorbing experimentation and personal influence. Loss, memory, and time began to surface more explicitly in the music, not as themes imposed from outside but as reflections of lived experience. The studio became a space where internal history could be translated into structure and melody. Music no longer documented only youth or romance. It began to carry continuity itself. Later years, absence, and the persistence of sound. In later decades, the passage of time reshaped everything surrounding Paul McCartney. The deaths of John Lennon and George Harrison altered the internal map of memory connected to the Beatles. What remained was not only legacy but ongoing presence through music that continued to circulate across generations. Performance became less about replication and more about continuity. Each appearance carried accumulated history, not as burden but as context. In quieter moments, especially at the piano, earlier years remain accessible through fragments of melody. The act of playing becomes less about reaching audiences and more about maintaining connection with time itself. Absence and presence coexist without contradiction, shaping a life that continues to unfold even as its origins grow more distant. A legacy that keeps moving while standing still. There is a point in every long life where biography stops feeling like sequence and starts feeling like atmosphere. For Paul McCartney, that point has long since arrived. The story is no longer only about what happened in Liverpool or in Hamburg or inside the whirlwind years of the Beatles. It is also about what continues happening now, in quieter rooms where a piano sits near a window and memory arrives uninvited through touch rather than thought. The younger version of him, the one who stood beside John Lennon and George Harrison shaping songs that would outlive their original context, feels at once distant and strangely present, as if those years never fully ended but instead folded into the present tense. What makes his legacy unusual is not just its scale, but its persistence. Songs written in moments of youthful urgency still circulate through everyday life, detached from their origin yet still carrying its emotional imprint. That kind of longevity creates a strange dual reality. The person remains alive in the present, while his earlier self continues to exist publicly in perpetuity. For Paul McCartney, this means that identity is not fixed but layered, with each decade adding another version that the world remembers simultaneously. The result is not fragmentation, but accumulation, where past and present coexist without conflict. Conclusion in the quiet between notes. In the end, the image of Paul McCartney at a piano in a grey London room is less about nostalgia than continuity. The music does not close, it extends. What began in Liverpool, shaped through encounters with John Lennon, George Harrison, and others within the Beatles, remains present in altered form. Time has changed speed, not direction. Each pause between chords holds accumulated years, yet also the simplicity of a single note, pressed and allowed to fade. Fame, memory, loss, and creation no longer exist as separate categories, but as overlapping states within the same ongoing life. And in that overlap, the piano remains what it has always been, a place where time briefly becomes audible,